Today on Network Africa, Rwandans prepare to vote in a referendum next week that could allow President Paul Kagame run for a third term. The World Health Organization says numbers are dropping on those killed by malaria in the last 1 year. By example, President John Magufuli of Tanzania joins in a cleaning exercise in Dar es Salaam's streets. The program begins right now. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. We'll begin in Rwanda, where the government today announced that people will have to participate in a poll next week to determine whether there should be changes made to the constitution, allowing President Paul Kagame run a third term. If it goes as planned and it goes through, President Kagame will be president of Rwanda up until the year 2034. Some Western countries such as the United States have frowned on Kagame's decision and are asking him to set an example for the region by stepping aside when his term ends in 2017. Kagame himself is yet to announce his intention to run for president, but has once said that it was up to the people to decide. He does not seem to be pushing for that approval. His lawmakers are on the ready to make necessary changes to the constitution. Last month, the Senate approved draft constitutional amendments allowing Kagame to run for another term in 2017. While the amendments shortened the length of a term from 5 years and maintained a two-term limit, the rules will not take effect until 2024. Coming back to that story a bit later, the Central African Republic's former President Francois Bozize has criticized a ban on him from running in the country's latest election. One of the 14 candidates banned from running for office in elections in December 27th, Bozize accused the Constitutional Court of banning him following international pressure. The former leader was ousted in 2013 by Seleka rebels and now lives in exile. Also, Burundi's government has pardoned over 100 protesters who participated in anti-government protests this year. Activists and human rights groups say many of the protesters were young men who were beaten while in prison. Burundi, which emerged from a 12-year civil war a decade ago, began spiraling into chaos in April, when Nkurunziza announced he would seek a third term, causing months of protests in Bujumbura and a failed coup. Bujumbura has been holding talks with European Union officials about whether the tiny East African nation can continue to benefit from EU aid after arresting hundreds of protesters, shuttering private media houses and closing bank accounts of non-governmental organizations. Let's recall again, President Paul Kagame announcing the government will be conducting a constitutional referendum next week, which will result in constitutional changes. Joining me now on Network Africa to discuss this is Dr. Emmanuel Ona of the University of Lagos. Dr. Ona, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
President Paul Kagame has been seen as a beacon of hope of leadership in Africa. He's just one of those few presidents who has even scolded other African leaders for underdevelopment in their states. He's also criticized a leader staying long in power. So why do you think now he's considering a third term in office, which could take him in the next 10, 15 years?
Thank you. Mr. Paul Kagame has been in power for a long time, but I think he is considering this power elongation in the light of the events that brought him to power. You know that before he came to power, there was genocide and the long-running civil war in Rwanda. And it took the force of hands led by Paul Kagame to really out the then Hutu government and bring stability to the country. I am sure that Kagame, thinks that he has become simple. So stability in Rwanda, and without him, there cannot be stability. But I don't think it is exactly true. I think that it is just one of those strong men. It is part of the strong man phenomenon in African politics, where somebody comes, is hailed because actually he has brought stability, and then he overstays. He now tries to, make himself synonymous with the country. He starts thinking that if he's not there, nothing else will work. In fact, it is the sudden phenomenon. You think about Mugabe, you think about Yoweri Museveni, you now think about Kagame himself. It is a disturbing phenomenon in African politics.
Yeah, he's actually making, as you pointed out, a mistake that most African leaders are actually making, that if they are not in power, then things won't go as planned. But if these changes occur to the constitution, then he could remain in power until 2034. And this goes against everything that he's been preaching against. And what would this mean for Rwanda, and what implications could it have for the rest of Africa?
Yeah, certainly it has implications for Rwanda, but even it has implications for democracy on a general note. Because the beauty of democracy is particularly in its idea of change. The fact that somebody comes, brings in his own innovation, and then stays for a long period, and then goes, makes politics interesting, makes even governance, a challenge. But when somebody, continues staying until maybe he dies, or until maybe he has to be chased away, the thing becomes frustrating for the people. And it is this kind of attitude that is making Africa a theater of conflict. So that so many people now, so many people, the only way to bring change is for them to start fighting, for them to start trying to take away the incumbent ruler. It doesn't have to be so. Ordinarily, democracy would have sacrificed that idea of change, so that somebody is there for a time, and then he goes, and another person comes. The implication for Rwanda is that, it's possible that they could degenerate back to the situation they were calling out for. Part of why conflict ravaged Rwanda was this type symbol. Habyarimana, who was there, stayed for so long and was not ready to go until, he was shut down in a place. And then the Civil War got to the point of genocide, and then Kagame came in. Now, since Kagame came in, it has remained. And even though the West has failed him, and I think even Rwandans have been happy with his regime, that is no license. That is no license for him to remain there for life, or to remain there for so long.
Dr. Ona, Dr. Ona, Dr. Ona, sorry to cut in here, but does shorter term mean better leadership in the end? Because, I mean, if you really want to talk about long-term leadership, we have examples in the West. We have the Queen of England, who's been there for all of her life since she was age 15. Does it really mean that if you have a shorter tenure of governments that there will actually be more development? Or is it just because that African leaders are sort of selfish and a bit greedy, that's why there's underdevelopment in their countries, not necessarily because they've been in government for such a long time?
Yeah, I think ultimately we have to agree that some of these leaders are just selfish. It is because of their selfishness which they are now projecting instead of the sign that it is, they are now projecting it as if they care for the people, as if it is a message. That if they are not there, then the country will speak back to conflict. But it is not necessary. As a matter of fact, the contribution that African leaders can make to governance in their various countries is to build institutions that will outlive them, institutions that will throw up leaders that can replace other leaders, no matter how good these other leaders have been. So that if you have been a good leader and then you cannot lead because you feel that when you lead the country will not work, then that means you have not really been a good leader. That means you have not really built up institutions. You have just maybe built a first person. They're not a good leader. So that many so-called leaders in Africa may be good people, but really, in terms of leadership, many of them have been lacking. And that is the case with Paul Kagame, and that is why he tries to do what he tries to do now.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Emmanuel Ona, for joining us on Network Africa and, of course, talking about President Paul Kagame's bid to run for a third term. Dr. Emmanuel Ona is a lecturer of political science at the University of Lagos. When Network Africa returns, fear grips the Lake Chad region following recent violent attacks there. Please join us again.